It's break time from the morning sessions of the first day of Global Leadership Summit. First speaker was Bill Hybels. He's the pastor of Willow Creek Church, and he talked about the 5 intangibles of leadership. One that stood out to me was self-sacrificing love for your team. Are you breaking down those barriers of supposed, coolness in leadership to really connect with your people and understand where they're going? Do you inspire them, serve them, love them, and empower them? And, number 5 intangible was creating a sense of meaning. And he talked about Sinek's, what, how, and why, and the why. And that's huge and inspired and intentional. And the companies that are successful really have a deep why, and they communicate it regularly. Jim Collins talked about the 7 questions all young leaders need to ask themselves. And he said, by the way, we're all young leaders. He's 55 or something. But he talks about your hedgehog, and what is that thing you're passionate about is one circle. What are you encoded for? And then what is the economic engine that will help pay for those BHAGs or those big, hairy, audacious goals? Or how can you succeed by helping others? And he said by creating meaningful work, which will help contribute to a meaningful life. Bill Hybels interviewed Ed Catmull, president of Pixar, Disney Animation. A couple things. One, it was fascinating to watch Bill Hybels interview him because it was an interview format sitting down, so it was fun watching how he did that and the way he asked questions. Bill made a big mistake in one of his questions. It's not huge, but it was a mistake, and it was fun watching him recover and also encouraging, like, okay, Bill Hybels in this humongous thing can make a mistake. You know what? It's okay. I can too. But the big thing that Ed talked about that really caught my attention, because it really goes along with the inspired and intentional, he talked about when the acquisition with Disney Animation and Pixar happened, how they took over and how they were able to implement the principles that they had learned and created at Pixar and transform them to Disney Animation, and how it worked. It took 4 hours to explain the principles. It took 4 years to make it impactful. And just like in my interviews with Ari, this is a long game. I'm not talking about anything. You can make some simple, quick changes, but to make cultural change happen, it's the long game, and you have to stick with it. But he did it, and they did it with the same team, which I also thought was fascinating. They didn't have to change a lot of people. This afternoon, that started out with Adam Grant. He wrote a book called Give and Take, and he talks about givers, takers, and matchers, and really that you want to get the right people on the bus with you, so more givers. Get rid of the takers and get some givers and matchers. Encourage people to do like little 5-minute favors for people, to give little 5-minute things, and you just call them 5 minutes. So it's just little helpful items. And then the third thing he talked about was create a culture of help seekers. So people who are humble and willing to ask for help will encourage more of an environment of, a giver type of environment and culture. And he talked about something called reciprocity rings, where it's almost like a group of like 9 or so people that share their needs with the purpose of asking, I have this need, and then people within that group helping them. But everyone asks, for something they need help with, to encourage them to be humble and ask for help. Dr. Brene Brown, very good storyteller, very natural. I feel like you're talking to her. This is what it felt like. Like she and I were sitting across the table and she's talking to you. But she talked about many things, but the 3 things that got to me is top leaders, through research, they do discomfort. They know it's a part of the job and they just do it. 2, they, are comfortable with emotion, in an emotional awareness of themselves and the others on their team. And one thing she talked about is you can choose comfort and you can choose courage, but you can't choose both. So you've got to do one or the other, and you have to be courageous to tell the truth and to be open and vulnerable. And then what a revolution this would be if we all live like this. And what I got from this is, trust, caring, and honesty. I mean, that's what we have to do if I'm going to be open and sincere with someone. Just really asking and say, this is the story I heard. This is the story that I'm telling myself about this situation. Because whenever we feel attacked or shamed, we tell a story about it to help us feel better about ourselves. To help us feel better, and when we do that, we do feel better, but it's not always the truth and the true story. So we need to share that with people and be willing to be open and vulnerable to that. Sally Krawcheck got on there next and talked about a few things, but one of them was diversity. And I like the approach she took to it. She's talking about women, but all diversity.
but how, you know, recognizing that differences, diversity, debate, and diverse opinions is valuable and necessary to grow a good team. You cannot be afraid of it. Then they did a video of Warden Burl Cain from Angola prison, which he's just made amazing changes there over the last 20 years. Great story about how he's turned that prison of 6,300 people around from the highest murder rates in the country in a prison to one of the lowest. Amazing. But one of the things that really stuck out to me, I mean, lots of things about it, but he talked about how everyone has a job there. There's no unemployment, and he goes, and it's meaningful work, not just make work. Tremendous. So, are people in your or our organizations have meaningful work, or they just make work? And then the last one was Albert Tate spoke. He's a preacher, and he preached it. So he came from he's from Mississippi, but he lives in California now and has a church. But he's definitely a preacher, almost old-fashioned kind. But he really talked about leaders, not the lie of leaving it all on the field, because you have other people that need you, and you know, not to live in that scarcity. So he's talking about the scarcity and you know, the abundance of God. But if you don't believe that, or you don't follow that, you can don't believe in the scarcity, you know, preaching talk of the world, but believe in the abundance of love, the abundance of caring. I mean, this just was talked about the whole time. So you don't have to. There's something about, you know, sharing and giving, and live in that abundance, and not the scarcity of takers. If I can go back to Adam. So that's that for the first day. We'll see what happens tomorrow. It's pretty good stuff. Thanks.